Good morning. Welcome to the webinar on engaging families in Tele-EI. We're very excited that you're all here to join us this morning in this stormy weather. At least in Columbus, there's a big thunderstorm, and we're hoping that will not interfere with our technology today. This is Lori Myers, and I'm the training coordinator for the Early Intervention Program. And I wanted to just go over a few housekeeping items before we really get into the presentation. So first of all, I want to mention how we're going to communicate during the webinar today, and that will be a couple different methods. We're going to have a few polls for you to answer, and when it's time for a poll, there will be a question that pops up on your screen, and you can click in the answer that you would like to select. Those polls are anonymous, but we will be able to see a percentage of people that answer each response, so we'll be able to get an idea of where we are and how everyone's feeling. We also have a questions box or a chat box that you can use to type in any questions you may have, and also any comments or thoughts that you want to share. We will be monitoring the questions as we go along, and there may be some that we need to research more and get back to you, but we'll try to answer them for the most part as we go along. I also want to talk about certificates for today. We tried to upload a certificate into the dashboard for you, but we had some technical issues with that. So if we can't get that taken care of by the end of the presentation, we will email those certificates to you later on. And what we'll have you do is an electronic sign-in, which means you'll just type your name, your role, and your county into the questions box or the chat box, and that will serve as your sign-in for today. And I will be giving you a code at the end that you'll need to fill in on your certificate once you receive that. And I will also repeat these instructions at the end for anybody who's just logging in or if in case you missed any of it. I also want to mention there are several handouts available for you in the dashboard. So you can feel free to print those if you're close to a printer, or you can download them, whichever works for you. If for some reason you don't have access to those, please feel free to email me and I can send them to you. And my email is Lori, L-O-R-I, .myers, M-Y-E-R-S, @dodd.ohio.gov. And I'm also typing that into the chat box, so hopefully you can see that. All right, I think that is everything I wanted to cover for the moment. So I'm going to turn things over to Diane Fox, and she'll tell you a little bit more about the presenter and the presentation.
Thank you, Lori. And thank you all 400 plus of our colleagues for joining us this morning for our Donuts with Di today. Hopefully you've got your favorite beverage with you and a couple donuts this morning to enjoy Maggie's presentation. First of all, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for the outstanding work that you are currently doing under extraordinary circumstances. One of the things that we had to do in order to continue providing services and supports to families is to figure out how to provide our services via technology, specifically video conferencing. Many of you are in different stages of your journey with video conferencing. Some of you have been doing this for a while, and some of you virtually overnight began your journey. So it wasn't, I can't remember, Maggie probably knows better than I do, literally a day or two after we figured we needed to do this, Maggie reached out to me and said, hey, I was going to do a webinar for our play consultants around video conferencing, but I'm thinking maybe the entire early intervention field needs to hear this. And so we gladly accepted her invitation. And so one of the things that we hear a lot And one of the concerns that we've heard a lot about video conferencing or using technology is the impact that it might have on the relationship between the provider and the EI team members. And knowing that the relationship is critical to the success of early intervention, we felt it was very important to early on provide you with as much support and information regarding the use of video technology with supporting families in early intervention. And Maggie's going to share the research around this and some tips and strategies to ensure that the relationship is the center of the early intervention services that we are providing. So whether you're new to providing technology or whether you've provided virtual services for a while, this Donuts with Di is for you. So please join me in welcoming Maggie Gons from the Ohio Center for Autism and Low Incidence, or OCALI. She is the Early Childhood Professional Development Manager for OCALI in the Center for the Young Child. She coordinates and provides training and support for the statewide implementation of the Autism Diagnostic Education Program, or ADEP, and Play Project within our early intervention system. Now, prior to joining OCALI in this position, Maggie is a speech language pathologist, and she practiced she's also a play project consultant. So she practiced as a speech therapist, as a play consultant, and she used technology to provide some of her services. She continues to provide services in private practice, and she supervises play project consultants. So please welcome Maggie. And if I left anything out, Maggie, let me know. So Maggie, take it away.
Well, thank you, Diane. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate everyone for joining in this morning. And if it's not thunderstorming where you are, I'm happy for you. As they mentioned, Lori mentioned, I was awakened this morning by this loud clap of thunder. And as I was getting ready this morning, it kind of made me think, wow, this sharp awakening. And I felt like, this is kind of an apt analogy for maybe what a lot of our lives are like, right? We just
Isn't that the
been
truth?
thrown into the deep end.
We have, but we're swimming. We're
Yes,
swimming. We keep
we
moving
are.
forward. We're like Dory, right? In the little.
Exactly.
I forgot to
Exactly.
ask you, Maggie, would you like the questions at the end? Will you have intentional pauses for questions, and Lori and I will gather the questions, or do you want them as they come and
We can
let
do
us
them
use our
sprinkled
judgment?
throughout.
Sprinkle them
Certainly if,
throughout.
yeah,
Okay. So
if
will you give?
something, yeah, if something doesn't make
Okay.
sense or someone has a
Okay.
question, I'll try and uh, notice them on the side as well, but
Okay.
just stop me if needed.
All right. Well, I can do that.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks everybody for being here today. And maybe before we get started, like Diane said, I was able to get an opportunity to use telepractices briefly in some rural parts of the state, and definitely came upon some challenges, some successes. And so I just wanted to be able to share with you guys some of the things I've learned, the resources I've seen, and certainly in these last few weeks, major professional organizations have provided a wealth of information. I don't know about you, but I feel a little bit overwhelmed by it all. But it's there, and they're continually providing those supports. So I just wanted to put it all in one place and share it with you. I'm certainly not the expert, but I just thought I would be able to pull it all together for you guys, especially for you that are getting started and maybe aren't feeling quite comfortable right now. So before we get started, I just want to get a better sense of who's listening in today. So I don't know, Lori, if we could start with a poll that just gives us an idea about who you are, what your role is, so we can maybe make sure we get information to you that's most interesting. So what is your role? Are you a developmental specialist, an SLP, an OT or PT, a service coordinator, a supervisor?
It looks like right now 43% are developmental specialists and about 23% are early intervention service coordinators, but we have speech language pathologists, OT and PTs, and supervisors on as well.
Great. So it sounds like we've got full teams across the board here listening in today. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Certainly we're using different ways to connect today. So let's just go ahead and dive into some information. So like Dan said, we're going to talk about strategies for engaging families in Tele-EI. And one of the things that you see in the literature is that sometimes we call it telepractice. I've seen it called telehealth, Tele-EI. If you're a speech therapist, it's telespeech. So there's a lot of different jargon that comes with this new territory. So one thing before we get started is maybe just sitting down and talking about what is telepractice. And so I just wanted to kind of take a moment and, explain what it is for those of you who don't know. So it is considered the application of telecommunications, I know, big word, technology to the delivery of services and supports at a distance. And so that can include things like assessment, that can include intervention, and it can include consultation. And one thing about telepractice is that the services and supports must be equivalent to the quality of services provided in person and adhere to the same rules. So sometimes there can be this hesitation that it's different because it's through a different medium, because you're not face-to-face. And for telepractitioners or people providing that service, they are expected to uphold the same level of service and supports that they would provide if they were actually in person as well. And there's a link at the bottom here through ECTA, the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, and they have a variety of topics related to telehealth and specifically around the coronavirus and how to provide services in that in this interesting new uncharted territory. And I think in the handouts you can also find some of those resources provided as well. So what are the different types of telepractice? Because amazingly enough, there's not just one. So the telepractice that most people are kind of experiencing now as they're trying this new face-to-face video conferencing is what we call synchronous. And that means it's interactive with a client or with an individual or a family. And that means you're live on video and they're live on video and you're dynamically having a conversation through technology. And so you're syncing, right then and there. Another type of telepractice is something called asynchronous, and that's store and forward. And that means I've collected a video of myself, I've recorded it, and then I'm sending it on to a family. They're watching a video, maybe uploading a video of themselves, sending it back to me, and I'm providing feedback in that kind of a way. And that is still considered a telepractice. It's just not live, and there are other technical things that go with that, but that is also considered a telepractice, that storing a video, sharing a video, and bringing it back, this kind of exchange. And then there's also a blend. So a lot of times when our team practiced in early intervention through our tele team, we had to use hybrid supports because our team members were not all in one location. And so maybe I would share a video with my PT to get her input, and then she would give me feedback back, and I would share that with the family. And so we had to get creative about how we used both our interactive types of telepractice and our hybrid uses of telepractice. So those are just kind of the three main types of telepractice. So before we kind of get into the meat of it, I just wanted to take a little bit of time and go over just a tiny bit of the research. And I did not even scratch the surface of the research that's out there. And amazingly enough, telepractices have been around for quite some time. And so this article, Teleintervention, the Wave of the Future Fits Families' Lives Today, first appeared back in 2010 in a parent magazine online. And what these researchers found is that actually many states, and definitely more now, were incorporating telehealth within early intervention Part C programs back in 2010. And what they found is that this was really a way to improve access to services and overcome personnel shortages in some states where maybe there are specific shortages around providers, or people live geographically far apart, and so it's not economical to do a lot of driving. And then some of these same authors and some other authors, again, published in 2017, and they had a multi-site study evaluating the benefits of early intervention via telepractice. And that was published in Infants and Young Children. And what they found when they looked at all these different states is that it was a way to create access for families that maybe didn't have access to early intervention services previously. It definitely qualified as natural environments when you provide telepractice to a family in their own home or in the community. You're definitely hitting that natural environment principle. They were able to provide early intervention services, and they were able to connect caregivers and on-site providers with remote providers. So in some instances, if you are still continuing to be on-site in some capacity, or were on-site, you could facilitate a connection with a remote provider. And that was something that we use in our telepractices with service coordinators, or with the developmental specialist who maybe was in the community and as an SLPI was offsite. So what they also found is that they were able to facilitate IFSP team collaboration also through video. And so teams were able to work together to develop the IFSP even through telepractices. So it wasn't just the visits themselves, but also meetings could be conducted through this platform. So another article that was published in 2012 again, was this overview of states' use of telehealth for the delivery of early intervention services. And what they found is that telehealth was really feasible to provide the timely receipt of services. So that initial service that needs to happen was able to be accomplished through telehealth. They also found, again, that people were able to meet that natural environment principle. They were able to address child and family outcomes via telehealth. They were also able to do some early identification through telehealth. Some screenings and some other interview tools were able to be conducted via telehealth. And they were also able to conduct transition planning meetings through the use of telehealth by bringing people together and having an online or virtual meeting. So those were just some of the things that they found that states were using telehealth to accomplish. So like I said, that's just a brief overview of the research. So kind of just jumping right in, Larry Edelman, who is one of the handouts that we've provided for you, put together a whole extensive resource on ways we can use video in early childhood and early intervention. And he actually just updated it in March, and I've included that also. So the 2016 resource is there, but also the one that was just updated in March in response to the COVID-19 epidemic. And so these are just some ways that we can use video that maybe we haven't thought of, or they're new to us. And so you know, you'll see pictures throughout the presentation where you have computers and phones, because we're all using devices in new ways now.
Maggie, this is Di.
Yes.
We are getting a couple reports that the sound or audio has stopped. So I just wanted to just kind of gauge from the audience how many people are having audio issues. I've received a couple texts things that work sometimes is signing in off and then signing back in. Okay. But it looks like for the majority of us, the audio is fine. Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Okay, we'll
letting me know.
continue on. Yes, so for those that are having audio issues, try signing in, out, and then signing back in. It very well could be the weather related. Sorry for the
Yes.
interruption.
No, thank you. So as I was saying, Larry Edelman provided these wonderful resources that really provide a lot of great tips and information about how we can use video. So let's just kind of dig into some of the ways we can be using video and maybe video conferencing to accomplish things we used to do face to face. And so one thing that we can use video to do is to complete evaluations and assessments. And so some of our evaluation tools can be parent interviews. We may ask parents to play with their child, and we may record it or watch it via video to gather more information about child development. Certainly some formal assessments, you may have to modify the standardization, and so you would just have to report that because of the platform or the medium, you didn't follow the protocol exactly. It was conducted via telehealth, or it was parent interview because of a different situation. But certainly we can do evaluations and assessments via telepractices or video. We can also monitor progress.
And Maggie, just to let you
Yes.
know, we have issued guidance on the evaluation, how to conduct evaluations via video conferencing, and we're working on assessment now. So we have some upcoming guidance around assessment coming to you soon, but they already have the information about how to conduct evaluations.
Awesome. Perfect timing.
Yes.
But we can also monitor progress. I don't know about you guys, but has a family ever shared a video of their child accomplishing a milestone, or you're just able to share with your secondary provider some progress on maybe something that was a concern they had consulted on. And so it can be a way to kind of share that progress and monitor how things are going by actually seeing it in video. We can also collaborate and share information with one another, with families, with team members through video. Sometimes seeing it in video can be way more powerful for a teaming meeting versus actually just talking about it and describing it with our words. Sometimes that actual video gives a wealth of information that maybe we didn't filter through our own lens because we are just seeing it happen and unfold on video. It can also be a way to model. So we can use video of ourselves, maybe doing a technique. I used to work with a PT and an OT, and they had this giant doll, and they would use the giant doll in their video conferencing to model maybe a technique or a strategy. I know some team members out there are finding, clips on YouTube or other video platforms of a specific technique and sharing those with families so they can see maybe a strategy or technique in action. You can certainly, none of us likes to be on camera, but you can certainly videotape yourself doing something and modeling in that way as well, if you're unable to model it in the moment during an actual interaction and video conference. You can also use it for team consultation or self-reflection. So, one of the most powerful tools as an interventionist can sometimes be to see yourself in action on video. You can definitely see what you're doing, see how an interaction maybe really transpired, because we all reflect back and see it through our own lenses. And it can also be used as part of supervision and reflection as a supervisor with your employee. So those are just a few of the ways that we can use video. Some other ways that we can use video can be to illustrate strategies. You can use it to give a tutorial. If you've shared a resource with a family or a website with a family, or maybe you've talked to them about a specific strategy, you can go through it through a video platform and show and model. You can actually do something called sharing your screen and show them step by step how to get through something or how to locate something. You can also use it to orient families to those resources and materials. So maybe there's a specific resource you really think would be helpful, and maybe your joint plan is that they were going to access that resource, but for some reason they keep getting stuck with the technology. So you can walk them through that together online, so that they can be empowered to do that and do it when you're not together. It can certainly be used for consultation and providing coaching, to share information, professional development like we're doing right now. It can be used to collect information, and also can be used for documentation. So, video, when recorded with permission, can be a form of documentation of something that actually took place and an interaction that took place. So just some things to remember when we're talking about using video and potentially capturing any video. You always need to obtain families' written consent, or a signature through virtual guidelines, whatever those might be, through your agency or whoever is your guiding authority, your licensing board.
Maggie, we have a question from Janelle. She wants to know, do you have any tips on emailing large video files? Sometimes they have difficulty with using our iPads when video.
Yes, and so one thing I would suggest is that in general, email is generally not secure and can't handle the file size of a video. You probably want to look into maybe some of the other larger file sharing providers. So, a secure Dropbox or a secure Google Drive will allow you to share larger files. One thing over the years, and other people who have submitted video for play maybe have learned, is that when you start to get over 5 minutes on a video, especially with our fancy iPads and phones that take amazing quality video, the size of the file gets so big that it just can become an all-day transference of information. And so you're probably going to hit a hiccup quickly with emailing the file. So, looking into those more cloud-based services where you can share a link, and certainly, also explore what kinds of guidance is out there through your licensing board. So right now, there have been some maybe restrictions loosened on how we share images and the security with which we do that. So those are some options. So hopefully I answered that. But definitely if it gets over 5 minutes, it's going to be a large file and it's going to take a long time. You might have to, set your device up and just let it upload overnight sometimes.
Maggie, we have one other question about around consent. Does consent always have to be written or just verbal over the phone?
So you need it to be documented. I think just to have that security, you do need it documented in some way. So I am not the authority. I don't know if a video of someone saying yes is okay. Certainly with PDF writing things, you can have someone digitally sign something and then return that, or take a picture of something and sign it as well.
And we're getting a lot of several questions here about the video and photo consent and whether it needs to be separate. If I apologize, but I think what I need to do is kind of hold those questions. We are actually working with ECTA, which is the National TA Center that the Office of Special Education Programs uses to provide their technical assistance. and actually Dr. Larry Edelman, which Maggie is using a bit of his work here. He is like the national guru of video conferencing. So we are working on clarity around that, and we have also issued guidance around informed consent. So we will package that together, our existing guidance on informed consent, and then also this video conferencing. In the meantime, just use the guidance that we are currently under. So, you know, HIPAA and all those things have lifted a lot of those requirements. So you can, at this time, obtain verbal consent and document it in case notes, but we highly encourage that you get the consent, like either a confirmation through an email or through a text.
Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
And unless you mentioned that, you know, moving to that second bullet point, you know, HIPAA and some of those privacy rules have been lifted, but you still have to have best practices in keeping families' information safe as best we can right now. So, you know, one thing you need to consider is, you know, a lot of us may be using a personal device during this time period. And so we need to consider how, where, and how long files are going to be stored and where things are getting backed up to. You know, if you're using your personal devices right now, where are those files going to? You know, are things getting backed up to your personal Google Cloud? And just making sure, you know, we're being diligent about where families' information is going to. And we still need to be complying with the codes and rules related to your licensure or your discipline or your whoever oversees what you do, right? We still need to follow the rules, even though the rules are a little bit fuzzier for us right now. We still need to kind of follow best practice. So what are some of these benefits? I know one of the things that it does is it provides access to families, right? Especially right now where suddenly we lost access, we can provide access. It's going to decrease travel, which we're not doing anyway, right? It also increases the use of family-centered coaching strategies. And I don't know about any of you that are maybe doing this right now or that are starting to do this, is I was amazed at how engaged families were, right? Their device was up on a shelf. I could see the family interacting with their child, and suddenly the level of engagement that families had in participating in our visits was just so different. They were present and they were able to kind of take it in. And for me, as an early intervention provider, I really had to, you know, test those coaching skills. I had to ask a lot of questions and really be mindful of articulating everything as much as I could in a lot of detail. It also allows for flexibility with changing family schedules and needs. So I don't know about you guys, but how many of you have maybe scheduled a visit and the joint plan is that you're going to do something around a meal time, and you get there and the routine was off, the child was already hungry, and the parent already fed the child. And so the whole joint plan pivots suddenly because, you know, life happened and the child needed to eat. And so one of the things about when you schedule something through technology is you can be a little more flexible. You can maybe respond to a family's routine that maybe you couldn't respond to previously, or you can actually, you know, if the family is out and about and it's a specific routine that you can't be there for, maybe you can be there for this part of the routine virtually. And so that can be a nice positive. You can be a little more flexible with your scheduling. Again, it promotes that natural environment, intensifies family involvement. You also can have these opportunities to work as a team. You know, and maybe you don't ever see the other person on your team because you're always passing each other in your cars and you're never actually in the same space. And so you can use this as a way to work more cohesively as a team. I found that I talked on the phone and texted and had more video chats with my team members than I ever did when I was in face-to-face providing interventions. And it also promotes developmental progress, right? We're seeing these videos, or we're seeing the child in action at home, and we can see developmental progress over time and how it's changing. What are some of the challenges though? Because I don't know about you guys, if you've stumbled upon any challenges yet, but there were challenges. And I think it's just important to be cognizant of those challenges, and then maybe have backup plans. That was one thing that was really helpful to realize, is that I always had to have backup plans, because technology, although it's wonderful, does not always work. And especially in maybe rural areas, but also in urban areas, right? So I like to joke that I live in, Columbus area, and I have a lot of big old trees. And sometimes my internet quality is poorer than elsewhere in the state. So just because you live in the city doesn't mean you always have good internet, right? So some of the challenges can be high quality internet connection. So a lot of us are on our internet signals in our homes, and if you have 10 devices going at one time in your house, um, or you just have a regular internet speed and you don't have high speed internet, you may run into issues when you turn that video feature on, and so that is going to create some challenges. You may notice the person's face isn't moving in time with their voice, and so you may hear some lag, or there may be some audio trouble, or you may get disconnected, right? There's a lot of people on a lot of different video platforms right now. Another challenge can be your confidence and your comfort level with technology, or a family's confidence and comfort level with technology, right? We're all just jumping in feet first, and some of us are really comfortable, others aren't. And so that can be a challenge, right? Is not only was maybe my visit, I had to feel prepared and confident, and know that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing in my visits, but now I'm adding technology, this added layer or maybe a complication to it, which can be hard. The other thing that's sometimes challenging, especially now, is finding a quiet, dedicated workspace with privacy. And for a lot of us, that's not a reality right now. Maybe you've got a lot of people in your space, and so being able to find a quiet workspace or private workspace maybe is a lot more challenging right now, right? We're juggling a lot of different things. Um, Another challenge can sometimes be feeling like you have adequate training and skill development for the technology and the intervention. So not only do you have to have that training and skills to provide the primary service provider model and coaching, but you also have to have the skill and technology training as well. And for a lot of us, we kind of just jumped right in, right? And there weren't necessarily these resources that are coming out now. And so I think that's one amazing thing, like Diane mentioned, ECTA and DEC are both providing a lot of resources and guidance documents right now for practitioners about telepractices and how we can do this, and helping build the skills. And there's a lot of great resources that hopefully I'll share with you later on as well. And one just thing to think about too is that we recognize it may not fit all families, and in previous practices it may not have been a fit, and at this point it kind of has forced some families to do it. But it is going to be awkward, and it may not fit all families because maybe they don't have video capability, right? Maybe they don't have high-speed internet, or they don't have a video platform, or some other things. There definitely are people in the state who don't use technology, or who live somewhere that technology doesn't reach or isn't consistent. And so those are considerations and unique situations that we need to problem solve, because not everyone has access in reality to technology at this point. Another challenge can sometimes be reimbursing if you are working through a private agency and doing some kind of billing. I think a lot of those restrictions have been suspended or lifted right now, but that's certainly an issue, as well as sometimes costs. So, the tools we use to provide this intervention can sometimes be a challenge. And then again, that security and file storage, is people's information secure? Where are files getting stored? How are you passing files back and forth? All of those, technical things can become challenges if not kind of worked through and thought through mindfully about what's going to happen and where are these things going. So,
Maggie,
yes.
just to let you know that most of the folks that have commented kind of affirm the challenges that you have listed here. But there's one that I find interesting, and I thought I would bring up. I think it'd make a nice conversation about challenges when you're serving two children. And so I don't know whether this means both children are eligible and receiving, and their families are receiving early intervention services for both children, or whether there's a lot of siblings home right now too. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to address this later on, but that we're definitely hearing from a lot of counties that this is both an opportunity and a challenge sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm happy to talk about that now. So I guess a couple of things. First, I'm thinking about I worked with a family and they had twins, and so every family is different and child and family outcomes are different. But reality is that the family is with these two children in real life all the time, and that is their real reality. And so we kind of set up our visits with that in mind. We didn't try and create this artificial scenario where the one child was busy and we just focused on one. We kind of split that session up and kind of shifted gears between what we were doing, because the reality is when they clicked off me on their phone or they clicked me off of their iPad, life was going to go back to both kids being there with the family. And so we tried to just take it on with as much real life reality so that when the family was going to practice any strategies, they had practiced it with the stressors of whatever else was going on. And same thing with siblings. I might acknowledge them, connect with them through the video, and then maybe, have them become part of the intervention or part of the strategy if they're able to. So helping facilitate with the family, helping engage with the child, that's one more little person that can be connecting with the child and building that relationship with the child than just the family member or the adult in the child's life. And so, I think if we can take that as an opportunity for that action practice with as much real life as possible versus, setting it up and practicing it with no one else in the room and not reality. If it's more real, families are going to feel more comfortable trying it when you're not there to be on their side and coach them through it. And maybe that's an opportunity to then problem solve. Okay, this was just a crazy time for us. Dinner time is hectic and so many things are going on. And so you guys can problem solve together what is going to make that go better so that they can get a chance to practice. Or maybe the family realizes, you know what? Ideally, maybe we wouldn't do it at dinner time. Maybe we would practice this at breakfast. It's quieter. So-and-so doesn't wake up until later. So I think it creates a unique challenge for you to manage more people on the computer and device or through technology, but it is an opportunity to again, go to those natural environments and what's really happening, because what's really happening isn't always the same when we're there as when we're there virtually, right? People let their guard down a little bit more sometimes. So hopefully that answered everyone's question. It's not easy, that's for sure.
Thank you, Maggie. Those are some great tips too. Thanks.
No problem. So kind of thinking about, as you were going to get started, what are just a checklist for you as a provider? Definitely have to have knowledge of your computer or your device, your equipment. If you're using an iPad, you need to be able to troubleshoot. So, definitely take an opportunity to set up a meeting with a colleague and practice with one another ahead of time. You definitely have to organize yourself and be attentive to the technology. So, right now I am presenting to you guys this PowerPoint, but on the screen, I also have a webinar control panel that I am monitoring. Hey, is the microphone still working? Is anyone sending a question? Do I need to turn my camera on so people can see me? So I'm managing a lot of other things as I'm talking to you. And so, you may find yourself, engaged in several things while also focused and attending to a family. And so, I would find, amazingly enough, that I hadn't left the couch all day, but yet my brain and body were exhausted because I was so mentally focused. And so that's one thing to consider. The other thing we need to have, again, is that training in the model of intervention. So if we're using a primary service provider approach to coaching, you need to have training. You need to know that model in order to be able to do it through telepractice. We also need to really have clear communication and coaching skills, right? Because we're going to lose some of that nonverbal information that we would have in person. And then we have to be flexible and adapt, right? Fortunately, in early intervention, a lot of us are very flexible and adapt, but this kind of stretches it a little bit further, that we need to be even more flexible and adapt even more. And this checklist is from a resource that has a wealth of knowledge. I've included it at the end of the PowerPoint as well, but infanthearing.org has a wealth of resources specifically on teleintervention. They developed guidance for teleintervention for people who are hearing specialists and providing that hearing supports, which some of you maybe are working with those specialists throughout the state. And so if you are, use them as a resource right now, because they've been doing this a while and they are really informed and really knowledgeable about using telepractices. So kind of going through that checklist a little bit further, one of the other things is we need to be willing to learn new technologies, and no time like now to learn new technologies, right? So knowing how to prepare the home environment or problem solve the family is also another thing to kind of think about, from your end, and you're seeing into the family's home. How can you help them be prepared, or how can you help them problem solve when it's not working or going well? You definitely have to spend time problem solving together. What's going to work best? Where can they set you through their phone or their device so that you can see what's happening, and maybe they can be hands-free? Just being able to triage any kind of situation that can come up with technology and how things are working or not working in the moment. Another thing is being able to identify activity settings, right? Through a video or through this virtual medium. How can you identify that activity setting? What are those strategies that you can articulate to the family so that they can try it in the moment? And what are those learning opportunities they can identify, or you guys can identify together? The other thing is that we need to be able to demonstrate strategies that we model and discuss during the session. So maybe I model something, the family tries it, it doesn't go as maybe we envisioned it. And so then, taking that moment to do some feedback and some reflection on what we're going to do differently. How can we tweak it? What could we try, or should we try it again? How could it look different? So definitely taking that time to debrief and unpack what just happened and what we just tried. Providing that feedback and reflection with the family, and then revising our child and family outcomes or activity settings as needed. Those are all some things we can think about as we kind of delve into this. And so I just want to take a moment now, because I feel like I've provided a lot of information and we haven't really even gotten into like technology. So Lori, I meant to do this earlier, but let's just go ahead and take a look. I think there's a poll. I kind of want to see how people are feeling about technology. And one of them was an early poll and another one was going to be at the end. So I don't know which is which.
Got it.
Oh, thank you so much. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just take a moment and pause and think, how do you feel about Tele-EI? I'm overwhelmed with the whole idea. It's happening, or I've got this.
So it looks like the majority is saying it's happening. It's about 68%. 23% said I've got this, and 8% are feeling overwhelmed.
Now it's only 7.
Oh, 7. Not
Yes.
too bad.
That's not bad. That's
I didn't do my
encouraging.
learning.
That is encouraging.
Yeah.
That is so encouraging.
Yes. Well, and I think you know, for anyone that had maybe hesitation before about it, we kind of were forced into it, right?
Yes.
It just kind of happened.
Yes. This is how families will, we cannot do face-to-face visits during this time due to the governor's order and this pandemic. So this is a way to safely provide the services and supports during a time that I feel families are going to really need us, and protect our staff and protect our families. I have an interesting question for you, Maggie.
Sure.
Okay. This is from Katrina. What about working with parents whose children is fascinated with screens? And I've heard this several times. And so the actual video and the telecommunication attracts the child to the screen. How
Sure.
how do we use this as an advantage, or any tips for distracting?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple different, you know, I think, you know, what toddler is not interested in screens, right? Because it's different, and it's super exciting, and our family's members are on them and they want to be part of it. So I think, you know, you can use screens as a way to engage. So, you know, certainly if a child's focused on a screen by themselves, that's not relationship building and it's not building that connection. But if you can help the family facilitate together, that can be, you know, a powerful tool. You know, you certainly sitting on one side of the camera and the child on the other, you guys can connect. And so what our challenge as an early interventionist is figuring out how that connection between you and that child can be transferred back to that focus of the parent and child together. And so maybe can that become a three-way interaction, or can the family shift the child's attention between you? Another solution that I found was helpful is if the screen or device was set up maybe like on a mantle place or on a shelf where the family wasn't fiddling with it during the visit, and I was just talking like a little, you know, person from up above, a little bug in the ear, kind of just giving some tips and some advice from afar. So it was less about, the family wasn't as focused on the screen and really, you know, focused there. They were focused on the child, and I could see from like a vantage point what was happening, so that it was maybe out of reach, and you know, over off the side, you know, maybe we were in the kitchen and I was on a counter and they were at a table, and so the screen wasn't accessible in that way. It was from afar, and so also it wasn't about me connecting with the child. It was more about the child and family connecting. So hopefully those are some ideas, but every situation certainly has unique challenges with that.
Maggie, what about families who have said no thank you to the virtual visits, will wait to face as an option because they don't feel their child's attention span will last more than 2 to 5 minutes? How can we
Yeah.
encourage them to participate?
So I think that's a great segue, because the
Yes.
next thing I think I'm going to be talking about is sharing with families. And so that kind of leads us into this nice topic. Sorry, I lost my mouse. I'm trying to move something so I can see my control panel. Sorry about that, everybody. There it is. Okay, so yeah, so I think a big part of this can be, how do we talk this over with families? I think this is a really unique time. We suddenly put a lot of stress maybe on ourselves, on families, and we really need to think about and consider each family situation. What has changed for them and maybe continues to change for them, right? As this, as the timelines extend, as maybe their anxiety builds or their uncertainty builds, what is changing or has changed for them. And for some people, this may be like starting EI all over again, right? Maybe they had a rhythm, they had a routine, they had things going, but all of those maybe systems or organizational processes have shifted and changed, and their routines are different. And, all of the things that make them feel secure and capable have been taken away, right? Their familiar routines. And so it can really present a challenge. So I think now more than ever, our job is to explain how it works, why it works, and what the expectations are. And when we set it up, and almost, we have to frame it, right? We have to believe in it ourselves. And if we believe in it, then families may be more open and willing to trying it. And so I don't remember, Lori, but I feel like I had a poll about with families, but am I correct or did
Yeah.
I? Okay, so maybe let's take a look at that.
All right.
So how do you feel right now about presenting this option to families? Overwhelmed and unsure about it all? Anxious, this is a big change for us? I feel like families are going to take a pass on this option. Or I feel I can share in a way that makes families feel comfortable.
Well, you're getting a standout, but then you've got almost ties for.
Mm-hmm.
So I can feel I can share in a way that makes families comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's winning by at 63%, and then 18 and 18% is the anxious. This is a big change for us. And then I feel like families are going to take a pass on this option.
Okay, great. So I think, I'm glad that some of you are feeling comfortable, but for those families that are anxious or uncomfortable, I think, doing our best to kind of ease their concerns, and maybe some of this information can be helpful to share with them that I'm sharing with you. But we can do our best to prepare families, right? We can provide information, so we can explain how it works. We can help them get to know the technology, right? Take some time and practice together. If they've used FaceTime or Skyped or been Zooming with family members, explain to them how similar it is, and that no matter what happens, you will be there with them virtually to help them get through it. Like I said, practice together. You can have them download any necessary apps that they're going to need to do this ahead of time. As you guys are setting up your visit, isn't the time to be doing the technology, but have them do that ahead of time. Again, maybe suggest a location in their home where they can prop the device or where we're going to meet. Kind of create a new routine and establish that and review the flow of visits, right? So if you had a predictable visit flow or setup for your face-to-face visits, we want to have this establish and review this flow of visits for them virtually as well, right? That creates this routine so it's comfortable and familiar, and they know what to expect, and that you're not going to judge them just like you didn't judge them when you were in their home. You're not going to judge them through their virtual home either. Another great resource I want to highlight is, can be found on the Ohio Early Intervention webpage. There are video resources that talk about using video technology to enhance coaching and early intervention, right? So if they're worried about it, maybe send them to these links that share what EI through a virtual medium can look like, and kind of let them see it before they try it, right? It kind of is a little bit reassuring to see it in action before you actually do it.
Hey, Maggie, just to give you a time frame, we're at 30 minutes left.
Thank you. I will keep moving. Oh, so one of the big things is getting set up, right? For those of you that it's happening, and maybe you found this, where you need to prepare. So you might email, call, text the family to confirm, because life happens and sometimes we forget to get online. You need to make sure your parent has access to the tools, prepare your equipment, establish your connection. If it's on the hour, you may run into some technical hangups because everyone's doing it. And then always have your cell phone ready just in case, because inevitably you're going to need to text or problem solve or troubleshoot when technology doesn't cooperate. And one word of advice, fully charge your devices and have chargers nearby. So when you are using video through a computer, a laptop, an iPad, it is going to deplete that battery super fast. And so you want to have those chargers nearby. You're also going to notice things are going to get warm real quick. So also make sure you are keeping yourself from getting too warm if you've got a laptop on your lap. So for that initial visit, some considerations, right? So especially right now, things may not pick up where you left off, right? Because we need to consider where the family is right then and there, right? Are they struggling with financial concerns? Have their employment situations changed? The other children are suddenly home, or maybe they're also caring for parents that are somewhere else. Their sources of support, their family members that usually help them, can't be tapped into right now. So, just take a step back and think about where the family is right then and there. What has changed for them? Where is their frame of mind? And then just join them, reconnect, rebuild that relationship because you guys are connecting in a different way. And think about what resources we can share because those are going to look different right now. And so just some considerations for families, just, thinking, do you need to make any accommodations, right? Does the family you are connecting with need any additional considerations? So, does the family have internet? If they don't have internet, can they get to a local library that has a Wi-Fi hotspot in the parking lot? I know my local library is closed, but they have put it out there that you can access and use their Wi-Fi from the parking lot. Not ideal, but an option. And I know DODD recently put out that there are some Wi-Fi hotspots out there. Can you share video back and forth? If you can't connect virtually, can you share videos back and forth and chat on the phone in that way? Are you able to turn your camera on for brief moments just so you can see each other's faces, right? And make sure you've visual confirmation that they're okay and that you see each other to kind of reconnect. Or some of the guidance out there is that some local cellular companies are offering some temporary services for families in some scenarios. And so some of those handouts maybe have information on that. Another thing to consider is accessibility as far as does the family need captioning? So, one of the things we know is that, right now in GoToWebinar, we don't have captioning. I believe in PowerPoint, you can turn captioning on, but it's going to pick up everything in your home. So if you're in a crazy, chaotic environment, know that any sound that happens in your home is going to also go through the computer in at the bottom. So another option for families as far as platforms for connecting, again, it could be like a Google Meet or Google Slides. So in Google Meets, it's a video platform. You can have live captioning going on for families that need that and need maybe that captioning to help them understand and comprehend what's being said. And with the restrictions of HIPAA loosened, that might be an option. Also, some considerations for you as a staff member or for you as a supervisor to think about. This is going to take additional brain space, right? So we are stretching our brains just a little bit more to try this out, and maybe more than we traditionally do, because we've also got the added stressors in our lives. I would encourage you to try not to schedule back-to-back sessions, right? Like I said earlier, this is going to take brain space, and it's going to be more intense in a different way. And so you really want to be able to take time and decompress and unpack what just happened and reflect. You also need to think about anytime you're doing a virtual visit or virtual meeting, you're going to need way more preparation time than you would a face-to-face visit, which I think is always surprising, that there's more prep and unprepping, like unpacking, than there is when you do a face-to-face visit. And so know that going into it, that you're going to have to do a way more preparation on the front end to be ready and confident when you go into your visit. So allow yourself that time to prepare and be ready. Practice with a colleague to get comfortable. Think about if the platform and the technology you're using offers webinars or supports. Zoom and GoToMeeting have a lot of free webinars that you can watch and view to help you feel more comfortable ahead of time. Certainly then also plug in, if you can, plug into your router, which I don't even know where mine is, but or try and minimize competing Wi-Fi activities. If you're a person who usually has a ton of web pages going and browsers going, turn those off, because it's going to make the strain on your device even harder. So those are just some considerations. And just some quick tips for Zoom, because this is a platform that a lot of people are using right now. And as people have flooded this platform, there are some great features about it, but there are also some additional security concerns that are coming out right now. One thing that is happening is something called air quotes, Zoom bombing, where people are crashing meetings that don't have passwords and then adding some inappropriate language or filter or input to those meetings. And so, make sure you check your security settings on Zoom. Try and make sure there's a password that you're only sharing with that family. If you are utilizing a version that has a waiting room, enable the waiting room so that you can pause people before they enter to make sure they're who they say they are. So, it'll keep others out if they're coming up next, or maybe you've shared a link with the family and they're just testing it out and suddenly surprised they're in a visit, you weren't expecting them there. And it kind of can give you this chance to make sure you're really ready for them to join you in that time period. So there's just some quick things to be mindful with Zoom specifically, but that is not the only medium you can be using. There's a ton of options. And so during that visit, you want to have your phone nearby. If you have the ability to use a private room, use that. If you don't, I highly suggest using headphones, right? Because not everyone in your house needs to know about what's happening in their house, right? My husband walking by doing the dishes does not need to know about what's happening in this person's life. And so headphones are really suggested, and the sound quality can be way better. Also think about what features your platform you're using has, and get creative about those features. Are you able to share your screen so they can see websites and documents and videos? Are you able to do some recording with their permission? Are you able to have the video screen up and then also have a Word document up and be sharing and taking notes with the family? And telling them that that's what you're doing, that you're not looking at them, you're taking notes, so that when we're done, you can send them those notes and they have a summary of what you guys talked about. And so during that visit, you need to explain everything. You will find yourself talking a lot. So have water nearby. You are going to find that you're asking way more questions and frequently clarifying. I know for me, that at a glance reflective coaching questions that I got from Sheldon and Rush way back at one of my trainings, I keep it nearby as a reference tool. I am constantly whipping it out and using it to guide me and having it nearby to help me coach my families. Again, we want to keep that focus on the family and child connection. And so, it's not really as important that the child connect with you via technology, but you really can be a great facilitator in that family and child connecting with one another and being a support to that family and child connecting and really foster that relationship between those two or those people in that child's life, because you're not there and they have to engage. And so it can be a really valuable tool in that aspect. If you are going to have a meeting like an IFSP or an assessment, if there's any way you can share or have those documents to the family ahead of time so that they can see what we're talking about and actually have it in their hand or have it on a device in front of them as well. And we just want to be able to verbally review all the words and visuals they might not see on any documentation, right? Because they don't have the luxury of having it in front of them. So we're going to have to be more mindful of really explaining things in maybe a level of detail that we didn't previously. So what are the components of a Tele-EI visit? You know what? They're not that different. You still have a joint plan. There's still observation. You still have that opportunity for action and practice. You have your reflection, your feedback, and you come back to that joint plan. And then the family is providing that intervention in the time between your session and the next session, right? So the components aren't changing. They're just coming a different way. So during the visit, some things to consider. Are you recording? Are you allowing for lag time, right? So some of us that are trying, face-to-face video conferencing with family members, you have to allow lag time for people to say things and finish. Ask if they're having any problems. Review that previous joint plan along with the child and family outcomes. Review what's happened since the last visit. What's changed? Has anything changed? What new stressors are going on? Explain the modeling and have families practice those strategies. Clearly communicate feedback and strategically provide the feedback, right? And then reflect with that family after they practice something. So what about when we end that visit? We're going to review that joint plan for the next session. Determine what action steps you and the family will take between the visit. Provide any information or make any recommendations as needed, and then go ahead and schedule that next session right then and there, because both of you have a calendar right in front of you, right? You're connected via technology. If you use a paper version, you have it right then and there and you can talk it through, because otherwise we go back to texting back and forth and kind of things getting pushed aside. So do it right then and there, and it will save you time trying to track people down in the future. So just to kind of follow up, when you finish your visit, you need to do some kind of documentation, right, that it happened. And so whatever your documentation needs are, continue to do that. You're going to want to share resources. Maybe you're going to share any notes you took with the family, because they weren't taking notes, they were working and doing some things with their child. And so if you can send them a summary of what you talked about and what's going to happen, that'll be reassuring. You're going to want to confirm the date and time of the next visit. And then, one of the things that's really helpful is reminding them the day before and including any links that they're going to need to connect. Just like the doctor's office, and especially with the online, it's easy to get wrapped up in something, lose track of time, and forget you're supposed to be on the computer virtually. And so those reminders are really helpful for families and help with cancellations. And so in thinking about that, when we collect and share video, we can collect and share video for joint visits, right? So you can have more than one person depending on your platform, or you can share video that way. You can be consulting with colleagues with the videos. Again, going back to that question about the videos and sharing via email, you have to consider the file size. And so if it gets really big, it's going to be challenging. Is your system secure? can your system handle it, right? So is your computer or your device able to handle it, or do you have enough space for it? And then again, where are those files going? Are they going to some kind of cloud system that you need to make sure isn't going to have those things later on available? And so one of the things we can also be doing is still doing that video teaming, right? So we can still have our team meetings via these video platforms. So some of the things that are going to help those teaming meetings go more successfully will be having an agenda ahead of time so that everyone knows what's going to be discussed and has a plan and is prepared for the meeting. Again, allowing that time for pausing and input because you've got lots of professionals. You're going to want to identify who that facilitator is and then who is keeping time. And then, you can also plan with your colleagues about a joint visit via video or teleconferencing as well. So how that joint visit's going to take place and having that joint plan about what's going to happen in that way. And so the biggest thing is to take time and reflect throughout this process. You're reflecting with families, you're reflecting with team members, especially as you're teaming, reflecting on how it's going, what supports you need, how you guys can support each other, because we're all kind of jumping in this together and can be a support for one another in that way. And so these are just, like I said, some of the resources that are out there. ECTA, the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, the National Center for Hearing Assessment and Management, parent-provider partnerships through teleintervention, the American Speech Language Hearing Association. If you're an occupational therapist, your board also has guidance on telepractice, as does the Physical Therapy Board right now. Telehealth Resource Centers is also a resource.
And Maggie, I'm sending the links here too, and I'm looking for our video. So sending links that have actual video of teleintervention, and in our biweekly that comes out on Friday, we're going to include these links and additional information too from Dr. Edelman. He's
awesome.
Done some revisions, so that will be coming on Friday. But in the meantime, I've shared the links in our chat box here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Diane.
You're welcome.
And the links I included are some of them, but like Diane said, things are being updated regularly. And so the handouts I provided, are constantly being updated. And I know there was a handout that was just shared through DEC, the Division of Early Childhood, that also has some resources that maybe would be nice to share as well. I don't know if I have that available.
And
I think,
Maggie,
yeah,
we're also in the process of developing a handout about the Bailey and Battelle tools and what materials that parents may have around the home that they can use.
awesome.
So those should be coming out soon also.
Yeah. So I mean, I think one thing for everyone to know out there is that there's a lot of resources and they're coming your way. And fortunately, one of the resources I'm going to share are some videos. So this resource is just some examples of some video conferencing resources that are available right now through a variety of ECTA resources. But also know that Ohio is a little bit ahead of this curve. So there are some great videos that were created and put together through Ohio's DD Council about using virtual resources, and nationally they are citing these resources as a tool for you. But these are some visual overviews on YouTube about what video conferencing can look like, how it can be used, and those can be found through this link as well, and also through the link Diane provided. And so there's also some links through some other states as well, but these are just a few of the different resources that are out there that provide video examples of what it looks like and how it can go.
10-minute warning.
Thank you. And these are just some of the references. And so before I kind of just pause and take a moment to talk about and answer more questions, I will just kind of go over, I work at OCALI, and we also have a variety of resources, not necessarily related to tele-intervention, but for your professional development. And so these are just some of the centers that we are comprised of. But while you're looking for maybe additional learning opportunities, our Center for the Young Child has some resources that are available for you and also for families. So we have something called the Suite of Resources for Early Childhood Professionals, and these are 1-hour modules that are free, specifically on understanding early childhood development, so monitoring and screening early childhood when there are concerns. And another module on inclusive care and education. And those are about an hour. They are available for Ohio Approved Credit and DODD credit. So if families wanted to watch them, they would be appropriate for families as well. And so they're, short video modules that families can access. Another resource that we have for free is something called Tidbits for Toddlers, and these are less than 10-minute videos that kind of give an overview of a few different topics at this point. So what is autism spectrum, accommodations and modifications, and what is evidence-based practice? And so these are just some quick, less than 10-minute videos for families that you can share with information. We also have one early care and education seminar that for those of you that are working towards your developmental specialist credential or need some credits in that aspect, there is a fee attached to this course, but it has 30 hours worth of content. And then the last resource I wanted to highlight is the Autism Strategies and Action Center, the Autism Certification Center. We have toddler and preschool age modules, and they're video based, and there are an extensive hours upon hours of videos that families and you as practitioners can access. So for families that are looking for gathering information and looking for a video format, this is a free resource to anyone in Ohio. So let's take a pause and answer any questions.
So Maggie, I think what might be helpful is maybe recapping some tips. I think the biggest concern that I'm reading is about engaging families. Sometimes face-to-face is challenging, but now we don't have the option of face-to-face. So what tips would you have for the novice or the seasoned early interventionist and the service coordinator? Any tips that you have to offer to engage families, keep families engaged, building a relationship with the family via technology?
So I think one of the biggest things that can kind of help that is really, taking that time out of your visit, even though we have things we have to get through and paperwork we have to do, to really try and connect and build that rapport and, ask them how they're doing, find out what they're interested in, join their interest, read the cues that they're giving or that you can pick up through this different medium. And, it's okay, especially right now, to say, you know what, this paperwork, yes, it needs to get done, but taking that time to connect in a way that builds that relationship on the front end will help strengthen the relationship for when we maybe have to have more difficult conversations later on. I think, just really pausing if you're sharing tough information through technology. Certainly, sharing your concerns about maybe a child having autism or having a delay in qualifying for EI is going to be a much differently paced conversation virtually. And so you may find that you need to maybe break up some of that conversation across a couple different days in a row, maybe, or, giving families time and space to process what's being shared with them, but just really, taking an interest in what they're doing, asking them how their day was, or what they're doing to stay healthy right now, right? Or asking, are they connecting with other family members? And so, just connecting with them in the same ways that we did when we were face to face, but also acknowledging that connection and that being present, really looking at them through the camera and connecting with them is going to be important, and letting them know that you care about them and you want the best for them. So joining them and being present can really help them reconnect with you or build that connection if maybe they're new and this is all uncharted territory. So, although it feels different, it can be also really rewarding in building that connection as you get started or shift your way you connect.
So what I hear you saying, some tips for engaging families similar to what we use when we're face to face, that
Yeah.
we're truly present, that this 30 to 60 minutes that we have with the family is their time. We come from a kind and caring attitude. We're responsive by listening to not only their successes and what happened between our visits, but also their concerns. And we respond to those successes and concerns. We celebrate the successes with them and we join them in their concerns and respond with problem solving ideas and resources and or
Yeah.
intervention. Okay.
Yeah.
I
It
think we
feels
can
a
do
little
that.
different, but I think you guys are all capable
Mhm.
of doing it. It feels funny, um, but I have confidence in you guys that you can do that and that families will respond. Um, One thing I'll say is that because you're engaging in some ways more intensively with one another, for some families that were maybe harder to engage in person, they may be easier to engage this way. It takes some of that guard away a little bit, um, because you don't see the whole house. Um,
See,
but one thing
personally,
is,
as a parent, that would be a good thing for me. I
yeah,
can control what you see.
yeah. And now we've got cool virtual backdrops. I mean, you could pretend you're somewhere else.
Yes.
But one thing is, because of that intensity and that engagement factor, you may find your visits are actually shorter. Um, they're actually engaging, they're actually participating with you. And so you don't need a whole hour online. You can do it in a much more condensed, maybe more frequent interval. That was one thing we had shared with some of the play consultants is that maybe, you know, 3 hours online is just way too much, but maybe you're going to have these short, 1 hour visits more regularly. So you can be more responsive, and that dose is a better dose with this new way of doing things. Or maybe you find that you're going to do two 15-minute check-ins to practice at mealtime, and that's going to fit better to support the family in trying the strategy um, that you're working on for feeding.
Absolutely. Yeah, this gives us an opportunity to actually be there during that activity and the routines. We can literally beam directly onto that activity setting.
Yeah, it's a cool option, and I think one thing I found is that once I tried it, some families didn't want me to come face to face, right? They like this option. They like the convenience, especially for, people who were maybe working during the day and really when they needed me was the evening. And you know what? I could do something at an off time because I was on my couch, they were in their house, and it could be an option. Not that it was a regular practice, but it suddenly opened the door to being flexible with how we looked at things.
Well, Maggie, I was just someone summed up exactly how I feel. I feel, and Deborah has allowed me to share her thoughts. This is exactly how I feel, and I'm gathering many of us feel the same way. And I'm just going to read it word for word because it's perfect. I can't thank you enough for commissioning Maggie. And actually, Maggie, you volunteered, and we can't thank you enough for that. I feel supported and cared about as I continue in this interesting challenge. There is a joint vulnerability that is actually drawing some families closer and establishing trust with me in a different way. Early intervention is providing services at a time in a family's life that is very, very scary. And I'm sure families would say the exact same thing about you. Thank you for being with me during this time. I feel supported and cared about. I bet you the families that you are supporting right now would say those exact words. Thank you, Deborah.
Yes, thank you. And you guys are, are supported and cared about. And certainly if you guys have other questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me, to Diane in the department. If we don't have the answers, we will try and find the information, or, I feel like I've been aggregating a lot of information besides what I've just shared today. So I'm happy to answer any questions or offer any support, and definitely know that your teammates are in the same boat with you right now. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share. Hopefully everyone feels more prepared.
And we have attempted to record this session. And if technology works, we'll be able to